Hello, hello. This is Yuri with Moving Sales Professionals for yet another episode of our podcast. With me, I have the CEO and owner of Gentle Giant Moving, Larry O'Toole. How are you, Larry?
Doing well, thank you.
Great, great. Thank you for joining us. It's really a treat. So, what got you interested in the moving industry, and how did you get started?
Well, I had an engineering degree and I worked for many years as an engineer. Then I moved back to Boston to start what I hoped would be a small manufacturing company. And I set up in an expensive living arrangement to try and get going. And until I could get some money coming in the door, I needed to pick up some extra work. And my roommate suggested I do moving. And I didn't pay much attention to him, but he actually bought an ad in the paper for $17. And he came up with the name Gentle Giant. When the phone rang and he said, "You've got your first customer." Of course, what was really going on was that he was a musician and he had a van for his band and he wanted to monetize the van. So I would book these little moving jobs and pay him $3 an hour for the use of his van. And I forget how long that went on before I said, "I just buy the van off of you." So that's how I got started, just doing little jobs like that. And of course, eventually you get called to do a bigger job. And I didn't have a license. I didn't have a truck. So luckily I had a neighbor who had both. And I made an arrangement with him that if I booked those bigger jobs, he would do them with me. And he still works with me to this day.
How many years has it been at this point, Larry?
That was 43 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So I was
a bit longer than I'm around.
Yeah,
so hopefully I can say the same thing.
Beginning, it was not. I was not serious, and I was serious about each job I did, but I wasn't serious about starting a moving company. And I had my friend who had the moving company. That went on for a while. And I think what made me decide to actually start a moving company was the stories that customers would tell me about horrific moving experiences that they'd had. And I investigated a lot of the other moving companies in town, found that they were all run by really nice people, really hardworking, good people. And when I would ask them questions, pick their brain and say, "Well, what is the biggest challenge in running a moving business?" Everybody said the same thing. It was finding good help. And having observed moving crews working, of course, you'd see some really good workers, but you'd also see people who shouldn't have been there. And if I'd owned any of those companies, those people would have been gone. However, as long as you have people like that on your team, you're not going to be able to hold on to good people. So that was my game plan, just hire nice people. People that you look forward to spending a day with them on a job and driving in a truck with, just nice people. That's all it takes, really.
And clearly 43 years later, that has worked out well.
Yeah, it does. It works. I mean, that's what customers really appreciate. And that's it. I mean, but you see some awful people working at moving companies. And I mean, they know how to load a truck. They know how to protect furniture. And they know how to bring back the check. But you're never going to go anywhere if you have people like that, because they don't leave a good taste in the customer's mouth.
Of course, as a result, they don't refer other customers to you. As a result, they don't leave good things about you. They never use you again. Of course,
even if you do a good job, the customer will find something wrong. If they see anything, they'll assume it was the movers, and they'll call and put in a claim because they just assume, because you didn't build a trust with them,
So given the opportunity to start over, what is working and what would you do differently, if anything?
I had a lot of what I considered the right ideas, but until you're actually out there practicing it, you don't really know what it takes. So obviously, if you had the advantage of the experience that you had and you could run the clock back, that would be good. I mean, a good example of that is treating your employees with respect. It seems like a no-brainer, right? I mean,
unfortunately, no.
Well, I would have always thought that I was respectful, and I always tried to be and show appreciation for people who worked hard. But I remember the first time somebody made a really, really stupid mistake. I mean, I lost it, in the sense that I kind of castigated them for it, and felt perfectly justified. I mean, I eventually came to realize that you've got to respect people, and even people make mistakes, and you've got to accept that and think about how hard they worked, and if they're the right kind of person, they deserve respect even when they screw up, because you can't let that could really damage your relationship with your people in general. I mean,
all it takes is one.
Yeah,
because the other people see it or they hear about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it didn't sink my ship, but because I would have told everybody back then that of course I got angry. Why wouldn't anybody? Look what he did, actually. But I eventually came to see that that's the wrong path, and you just have to treat everybody with complete respect. But you have to make it easy for yourself by hiring good people in the first place, people that you can trust, and people that you can respect to begin with.
It's definitely a lot about building a company culture. I mean, that's something that we certainly try to do here. I work very hard at keeping that. It's, sales, obviously sales is a lot about production and stuff like that. But even with that, it's, while great salesperson is great to have, but if they can't keep the company culture, and if they don't have the right attitude, that can be infectious to other people, which could be a downturn. And same thing could be said of movers or any really environment, any workplace.
Yeah, that's true. A friend asked me when I was out in California once, to come by and visit his company and give him some feedback. And so I spent a day with his people, and he asked me what I thought. And I said, we're going to have to fire that guy. And he said, what are you talking about? He does 3 million in sales. I said, well, you just got to get rid of him. And because, he's just toxic for the rest of your company. But of course, nobody would even dream. I mean, they thought I was crazy. But of course, what ended up happening was exactly what I expected. A couple of years later, that guy left and took all his accounts with him. I mean, here was a person who just lorded it over all the other salespeople, walked around like everybody owed him their job because he booked so much work, and without him, everyone would be a dead duck.
Right.
And I even saw him patting women on the butt and being inappropriate with some of the women right in front of me, I mean, he didn't even see that was a problem. Of course, you're talking about the 90s. It's a little harder to get away with that now, but still, it was that they kept an individual like this around, because you need somebody who makes everybody else around them better,
Right.
not somebody. I mean, what ended up happening after he left was all the other salespeople blossomed
Right.
and improved.
Yeah, that's the same feeling that I had. I had a salesperson that worked for me for over 3 years. She did, and she was a great salesperson. Don't get me wrong, great to the day. I would say she was a great salesperson. But when it came, and while in retrospect, she did what she was asked to do for the company, right? Anytime you'd put a new person there next to her to listen and to learn and to observe, she would act like that person was her own personal inconvenience. And that's
Right.
something that you can't do. That's something that we the environment that we have here at Moving Sales Professionals is where anybody here can and should feel that they can come up to anybody else that's on the floor and ask them a question or ask them for help. There should never be this feeling like of discomfort or whatever, because I always wanted to work myself at a place where I would never have that feeling in the morning when you get up and you have to go to work where, oh man, I have to go there again. That's one thing that's what drives me in terms of company cultures, that I never want any of my workers to feel that way.
And that's true on the trucks also. I mean, when you hire somebody and you train them up and you send them out, you want them to be welcomed warmly and treated with respect. In a lot of companies, they treat new people very disrespectfully, like you say, it's like an inconvenience to have to work with. Oh God, I got to work with a new person, and oh my God, this is a pain in the ass, and can you believe what this idiot did? They asked me, well, what's a wardrobe box, right in front of the customer. Anyway, it's just no way to treat your fellow human beings.
I mean, you got to remember that you were that new person once,
right?
And
exactly.
would you want to feel that way? And it's
exactly.
And if you help that other person, that person's going to be ultimately, they're going to be thankful to you. They're going to treat you in respect. And who knows, it's a very small world, especially in this industry. You never know when you're going to run into somebody where you may need something from them, maybe, or maybe you had a bad year and you're out on your luck and you could use a little bit of help. And, if you're treating the other people with respect, they will help you. And if you don't, they probably won't.
I agree. I think it's so important because when you have that kind of environment, the customers don't even notice that somebody is new.
Yeah.
Because they can complain. I mean, we guarantee our work. If somebody has a complaint, they get their money back.
Yeah.
So we have to be pretty careful who we send out there.
Absolutely. So, question, Larry. So, with the current market, obviously you've seen things go up and down with market, and with everything else. With the current market conditions, how do you see the 2023 shaping up? What are you doing to differentiate your company, and what are you planning to do to continue staying busy? I mean, obviously you get a lot of referral. Gentle Giant is a known name. But other than that, is there anything that you're doing differently?
Well, you just up the ante on everything you're doing already because, when you're around long enough, you kind of have moved pretty much up market and you get a lot of customers that are quite well to do, and they're not going to be as affected by inflation or downturns. So we're lucky in that regard that we have a strong customer base and a lot of repeat business. So you just have to keep pushing that and you can't get too complacent. You can't get too full of yourself and think well, I remember, one of the things coming to America, there were different expressions that I wouldn't have heard before. And one of them was, that person thinks their shit doesn't stink. It's a real American thing. And I can remember somebody looking at me and saying, yeah, there's a bear shit in the woods. And I'm thinking, oh, that's a pretty good expression, because they were referring to somebody who just did something. And why would you be surprised? That's the way they always do it. So there's a great expression for it. But yeah, there are people out there that think they're the, as we said in Ireland, we said the bee's knees, but shit doesn't think it's good enough. Anyway, yeah, you can't get too full of yourself. You have to realize that you have to keep improving, and you can't take anything for granted.
I think it's very important no matter what stage you may be in, or what stage you feel you're in. I think you need to stay humble, because at the end, the world has its way of writing things, so to speak. So today you're at the top, tomorrow you may not be.
Right. That's very true. So you've got to keep trying to do better and better, and taking better and better care of your customers. And that's really the plan. Don't know what else you can do, to be honest.
What would you recommend for somebody that's starting out today, let's say? What would be your suggestion, recommendation?
Well, just remember to make sure every customer is happy. I think where a lot of movers go wrong, and in fact, when I told you that I went around and talked to a lot of movers when I was thinking of starting the company seriously, you'd start hearing stories about customers and the horrible things they had done. And people would be involved in small claims or something like that because a customer didn't pay the bill, or a customer accused them of something that they didn't do, or was putting in a claim that wasn't valid. Well, look, most people are pretty nice at the end of the day. And you've got to give people the benefit of the doubt and try to win them over. We've paid out a lot of claims, obviously, where we knew we weren't at fault and we knew it had nothing to do with us. And you try to, in a friendly way, get the customer to realize that. And sometimes you succeed, but sometimes you don't. And you can't get into fights and arguments with customers. And the other thing is, when you're on a move, and I mean, this is something which a lot of movers should think about more, because you're on a move, and the customer is a bit of a jerk. Okay. Well, look, their money's as good as everybody else's. And you don't know what they're dealing with. They could be dealing with all kinds of difficult challenges in their life. And it's not top of mind right now to be nice to the movers. So you can't let that affect your body language. You can't let it affect your approach to the job. You've got to try just as hard for them as you would for your nicest customer. And you've got to try to win them over at the end of the day. So I think it's just to build a reputation. That's the most important thing. And also, you need to have a culture where your people feel like they're a part of it. Because if they don't, and somebody does something inappropriate on a job, or isn't really given 100% or whatever it is, you're never going to hear about it. But you need people, your people, to be so upset if they have to work with somebody that's not working hard, that's being disrespectful, that's hiding in the bathroom, that's, guzzling the customers' drinks out of the fridge without asking, or whatever it is. That person needs to be gone. You can't have that person. And of course, you can't. That needs to be, first of all, you've got to try your best not to hire a person like that. But if you happen to do it, you can find out really quickly if somebody is not up to your standards. And you've got to be focused on that. You can't just assume now you have another warm body out there that you can bill out for. You have to be sure that this is a person you can trust. Because when you get that phone call from a customer saying that the movers stole their jewelry, you need to know that they didn't. You don't want to be worried that, oh, maybe that guy Joe, yeah, maybe it was him. You have to know for a fact that nobody in your team would do that. And for you to be sure of that, you need to have all your people just as vested in that as you are. And that if they see somebody that's not appropriate, they won't accept them around the place.
Right.
So I think it's just trying to be positive and doing the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. Those things are so important, and it's also sometimes, especially with new movers, sometimes what they don't realize, there's these little things that can be a difference between you getting referrals, between you getting complaints and not.
Right.
I always advise all of our clients. For example, if you have two jobs scheduled for a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, right? When you get to that first job, you know it's bigger. You know you're not going to make it to the second job in time. Don't wait till the afternoon to tell us. We should know about that when you know, we should know. And at that point, we can call that the second. First of all, we can call the first customer and tell them, hey, you have more stuff. It's going to take longer. Before, you're halfway or almost finished with the job where they already know it's going to be longer, right? But to give them the heads up so they have time to prepare themselves, right? Then you're going to have less of an issue.
That's a good example of what I'm talking about. But another thing too is when I would talk to these other moving company owners, like I say, really good guys, they talk about having to fire somebody because they did something like got in a fight on the job. Can you imagine that? Or showed up drunk or something. Now that's one thing, but then they'd end up hiring the person back the next season, figuring they'd learned their lesson. I mean, you're not a social worker. It's not your job to fix people. And you can't be given second chances to somebody who does something awful. They need to learn their lesson. And the only way you're going to teach it to them is to show them that you're not working here anymore. And if you're going to work anywhere else, you better change your behavior. But so luckily we have very, very few, if any, of those kind of HR issues. But in order to avoid them, you have to be very strict. I think movers, a lot of times, if someone is a good mover and they know how to drive and they're a good driver and a good loader, people are always going to find an excuse to keep them around. But you're only shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, sooner or later it's going to pop up.
Well, whatever happens, if the other people don't like working with them, it's going to hurt you overall because it's going to create a bad atmosphere.
So to sum it up, make sure you have the crew that you feel comfortable with and confident in. To sum it up, make sure that you have a company culture that's something that's going to endure.
Right.
And for that matter, realistically, it all starts at the top. If you are the owner of the company, you set the tone.
Right.
If you're out, realistically, you need to create a separation. You're the owner or you're the mover. It can be both. So you can't go out drinking with your movers. That's not a good idea because that may create or put it in, even though you never said anything or you never made them feel that way, it may create a precedent where they think it's okay to do that on the job or before the job or whatever, because of one instance,
Right. Yeah, this is true. And if you run a country like Turkey and you have a culture where people are putting up buildings that aren't up to code, that end up collapsing in earthquakes, you should resign because the fish stinks from its head and it's your fault. Or you can go around and blame everyone else.
Right. Or, you can do what Putin is doing to his people right now, but that's getting political. And
That's a little extreme.
That's a little extreme where it's getting
I'm just
political.
talking about,
But
pointing at a culture that
it rots
you
from the head.
create and then you complain about it later. So
Right.
you have to.
You have that. The way that you want your movers to be, the way that you want your movers to treat your customers is the way that you should set into how you treat your customers, how you treat your movers, and how what the environment is in general. Because if you're not, it's going to, sooner or later, it's going to come back to bite you.
Right.
But anyway, we're going to round this up here.
Okay.
Larry, real pleasure.
Great
Thank you so much. I'm sure that all the people listening are going to be very thankful for the wisdom that you imparted, and especially new ones getting in the market. It's, it takes time and definitely takes a lot of ups and downs to build a successful business. And you've certainly done that. And we really thank you for being here on our podcast. And as we always say, the world moves on its own. Let the professionals move yours for you. Thank you very much for joining us for our podcast. Please, we are going to supply all the links for Gentle Giant and in general for the information. Please continue tuning into our podcast. Please like and subscribe. And thank you very much for your support. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Fun.